Welcome to the Pain Performance of Pohada podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nick Smith. I'm a licensed physical therapist and strength and conditioning coach for Jiu Jitsu and other combat athletes. And today I'm going to tell you the untold story of how I started Jiu Jitsu. I've told variations of this story in the past on Instagram, but there's a little bit of a twist to it that I've not shared with a lot of people, mostly because I just don't feel like it's super needed because it's a lot of nuance. But I guess it does tell a little bit more about the story and kind of encapsulates everything. But my introduction to MMA started in the 90s watching UFC. I used to watch the old Royce Gracie fights and everything that was just crazy tournament style. Watched a lot of Pride growing up and love the sport. Knowing that I am 10 ply soft, I knew that being punched in the head was not it for me. And I love the idea of being able to do jujitsu, grappling. It allows you to use your brain a little bit more systematic, although it was still tough, very enduring. It was something that was a little more sustainable than getting kicked in the head by somebody. And my first opportunity to train jujitsu actually started when I was in undergrad. So working at I guess I would have been a freshman undergrad, I think at the time. I was working as a physical therapy clinic as an aide. And during that time, a person came in who was a John Jacques Machado black belt and knew John Jacques Machado was the dude. This guy's a black belt under him. He must be pretty tough. He was opening a gym in my hometown. And so during that time, I had gone for maybe like 3 or 4 months. Started off at this like inaugural, like, hey, this is an introductory price. Started off, went to a couple classes, did a little bit of gi. Still didn't know what the hell I was doing. Learned a little bit, sorta, um, and then kind of fell off. Um, the gym owner had raised the prices quite a bit, couldn't sustain both, decided not to train anymore. And I still love the sport, still watch UFC all the time. And then it kind of turned into this like nomad type of thing where for maybe like another additional year, I would just occasionally, I would grapple in the boxing ring at Gold's Gym because the guys there fought MMA and they didn't really give a shit if you're training there. Still didn't get any better. Just was, I guess, somewhat more familiar with playing guard and being able to sort of defend myself. But I guess if somebody had video of probably some of those old matches, it would be horrific. Horrific. And at that time, it kind of phased out, got into other stuff, actually got back into BMX racing, which is something I did as a youth athlete and actually raced professionally for a couple seasons during the end of my PT school career. And during that time, I wasn't really into any other sports. I kind of tasted a lot of other stuff. I played ball sports growing up, raced BMX, got into powerlifting a little bit, um, but nothing really held my attention other than BMX. BMX is something I did for a while. Basketball, I played many years, but it was off season. You're not playing year round. Nothing held my attention enough to where I wanted to do it forever. And then going through school, it was also hard to do jujitsu. I wanted to, I love the idea of doing it, but time, money wasn't there. Then during my fellowship year, this is the part of the story where people know most of the time. I had an opportunity to work on the medical staff of the IBJJF Gi Worlds in 2018. During that time, 2018, I was on the mats and I was with my buddy Jacob Meglar. He got me introduced, Dr. Ethan, who runs Black Belt Sports Medicine, and he was connected with our fellowship at the time, and all the fellows in my cohort were allowed to work the event for that day. So I come in, I get placed on a mat, basically just working with the different medical staff there to assist them with different things, support them, offer different tools, whatnot. Physical therapy and athletic trainers have very different skill sets. Athletic trainers are the best at being able to address injuries, bang things up when it's brand new. If you have an injury that's fresh, if you have a cut, those guys are the ones that are rushing out there. They're closing the cut, wrapping you up, make sure you're safe, relocating limbs, all the different stuff. They're great at that. Physical therapy typically is more the after. Like, what's the rehab portion of that to rehab the thing that happened if it's not an abrasion, cut, whatnot. Um, a lot of sports physical therapists actually do both. They started as athletic trainers and then decided to get their doctorates. They're incredible. So there's a couple of my colleagues who do both, and they're great. So being there, just kind of being some support. Um, attending to different people, different injuries, and then if they were banged up and they went in, would help them get ice packs. I actually did a little bit of mobility stuff to kind of help them do some assessments to see like, hey, you actually tore your ACL, um, and different things like that. Be able to see the different joint mechanisms, be able to tell them like, hey, based on this. This is what's going on. So we got to help out the athletic trainers by doing some different assessments that maybe they weren't familiar with. And then I got to see firsthand what were some of the first aid details, relocating stuff that was like on the fly. So if somebody got banged up, they're running out there immediately. Coincidentally, that year, and I'll never forget this. This is what got me into jiu-jitsu, literally. I was on the same mat as Kaynan Duarte. Kaynan was a brown belt at this time. This is 2018. So young kid, um, watched him absolutely terrorize his division. And I mean terrorize. He fucked everybody up. And I remember watching this year. I'm like, who is this guy? This guy's incredible. And growing up in MMA, I knew who Andre Galvao was. So like I'm like, that's Andre Galvao. Like I watched him fight. I've seen his jujitsu matches. So I'm like, that's his coach. Okay, so this dude's a stud. He's up and coming stud. And so he runs through everybody in that division. And I would just was blown away at how good he was. Either he won by submission. I think he won the gold medal match by submission, or every other match he won by like 12 points. It was just like assault. And after that event, I was so fired up. And I'm like, dude, you're kind of burning out of powerlifting. It ain't that fun. You've been wanting to do jujitsu forever. You just watched this. You had an absolute blast. Fellowship is starting to wind down. Let's send it. You got to start. So that was in June, I believe, of 2018. October 28th, 2018, I started my first class. Connecting with my buddy Jacob, who was at that event. I was like, hey, man, do you know anybody around this area who, coaches a good school, can learn, that type of thing? He's like, hey, Lucas Leitch. I'm like, I've heard Lucas Leitch, seen some of his matches. I'm not super in depth with the nitty gritty part of jujitsu, but I knew a lot of guys who had transferred to MMA and watched a lot of super fights. I was like, I know who Lucas is. He's like, yeah, he's got a gym in Upland. I was like, sweet. That's not that far from me. It's only about 20 minutes. Um, I'll check it out. So I think I messaged their Facebook because I still had Facebook at the time. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in a class. I see you guys have a 6 a.m. class that works perfect for school because I can, or for work because I can train and then go afterwards. He's like, yeah, come through. So October 28th, had my first class with my now coach, Christian. Uh, Christian, he and I, our birthdays are like 2 weeks apart from each other. I think he was a purple belt at the time, and I became like a 6 a.m. guy. And I still trained at the night class with Lucas and, went to comp class and kind of grew, but that's how it started. And right away, I mean, there's only four of us. And all four of these guys, we still train together now 6 years later, which is incredible. I was a white belt. My buddy Brian was a blue belt. My buddy Abe was a purple belt. And Christian was a purple belt. But he was like competing and very, very high level stud. And, within the first year, I think everybody there got promoted. I think within the first year, except for me, because I was still dog shit. And that 6 a.m. class, I got my ass whooped for a year. And I mean badly. Every single one of those dudes whooped my ass, and it was brutal. And finally, around 8 months, a year in, other people started to kind of come into the class that were newer. And then I realized I'm like, hey, I'm not the low man anymore. I'm second to low man or third. And that's how it all started. Kept going to that morning class, would train with Lucas in the evenings, depending on how work schedule and everything. And I just trained as much as I could. And I think within 3 months of training, I just decided, hey, I'm going to sign up for a competition, which is stupid, really dumb. I didn't have a game. I didn't know anything. But I signed up and I got silver. I think there was like four people in my division. I won my first match by points, and I lost my second match by points. And of course, I got silver medal. So I'm like, there's no. I caught the bug. Like, I didn't learn the hard way. Like, hey, bro, you were wildly underprepared for competition scene. What the fuck are you doing? And I ended up starting jujitsu and competing right away. Growing up competing, I've always loved competing. I raced BMX all the time. You compete 4 times a week sometimes. I competed at national level, world level. I played ball sports, so I was playing games. I didn't care. I love competing. So I knew I wanted to do that. And my mindset around competing has definitely changed a lot. But yeah, 6 years later, man, showing up consistently anywhere between 2 to 5 times a week. Um, Training whatever I can, doing the gi, doing the no gi, competed a ton at white belt, competed a ton at blue belt, and here I am 6 years later. Um, Immersed in this whole community, training in a lot of different places, met so many different people from competitions and different gyms I've trained at. But it's pretty wild. When people say jujitsu changed their lives, jujitsu literally changed my life. I've been able to start this business now, working almost exclusively with grapplers and been able to, provide for my family. I was able to quit the healthcare system and do this full time, which is wild to think about. And it all started with me just watching, well, sort of. Technically, the stuff back there had an influence, but it all really started with me just watching a jiu-jitsu competition. And here I am, fast forward, run a gym that's connected with a jiu-jitsu gym. Like as I'm recording this right now, I'm looking at the mats of Sector Jiu-Jitsu. I have a gym that is connected with a jiu-jitsu gym. So I have the strength and conditioning, the rehab on site. And it's one of the coolest things. I think it's the only one on the West Coast that I'm aware of. There might be one other, the only one in California for sure, that works, just with jiu-jitsu. Not an MMA gym that has a PT. Like this is a PT that's only with jiu-jitsu. So sports incredible. And where it's taken me so far in just 6 years is wild to think about. And I'm so excited to see how it continues to grow and how this business and my personal journey has continued to grow. But that's a little bit more on how I started jujitsu and the full story. So thank you for sitting around and hearing me yap about the history. Um, but I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and getting to know a little bit more about me. Looking forward to hearing you guys in the next one. If you ever need to reach out regarding anything, injury, performance, if you want to link up with me at all, you can follow me. You can see in the show notes. My Instagram is at SmithForgeSC. Feel free to DM me. I'd love to contact, get in touch with you, be able to talk to you a little bit more about jiu-jitsu or anything you want. But until then, see you on the next episode.